Welcome to class session 1 for Ed 407-507. Please note that there is a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this video that you could take notes from or just view after watching the video in case there's anything that I went over too quickly that you would like to go back and look at. We will be discussing your syllabus, the class design, your assignments this week, and class session 1's content. The first thing you'll need to take a moment to do is read the syllabus. It was written for a reason, so please take the time to look at it so that you know what this course is going to be about. It shares with you the 3 textbooks that are required for this course that you will need to purchase. I will be teaching math the first half of the semester and writing the second half of the semester, but I highly encourage you just to get all 3 books from the get-go. And I would like you also to pay close attention to the assignments, the class sessions, the grading policies, and the course policies. And if you have any questions, let me know. This is an online class. However, the class is a hybrid class, meaning that there will be some live interactive sessions built in. There are 15 presentations for the 15 weeks of the semester. If you open up a folder and there's not a video, all that means is that that presentation is going to be viewed at our live settings. There will be discussion boards throughout the semester. And also just to let you know, these interactive sessions that will do some activities with math and writing, I will also set aside time that you can work with your graduate project groups. Then the last 2 weeks of the semester, please plan in your calendar as well that you will be presenting your graduate projects to the class. If you are not a graduate student, you are still expected to attend all of the live sessions. Here are your assignments for this week. I wanted to get to know more about you, so please do an introduction in Blackboard. If you are not a graduate student, this assignment doesn't apply to you, but if you are, you need to sign up to be in a graduate project group. Then each class session has its own password. For this very first week, it's the word education. Please write this down and send it to me via email. If you're not already in a field experience placement, you'll need to get in one by next week. If you're already there, start identifying which students you want to work with for your math project and even possibly your written expression project. And if you're questioning what kind of students do you need to identify, go back and look at your syllabus underneath those 2 projects. Each week you'll have a weekly reading assignment. For this first week, you need to read chapter 1 of Hudson and Miller and take the reading quiz. I've also given you an optional research article that you can read as well that you can find in your class folder. Which brings us to our very first content presentation. This week we're going to talk about the historical roots of special education. We're going to look at the IEP, RTI, least restrictive environment, inclusion and integration, and from that we're going to talk about co-teaching. For the very first thing that I would like you to do, you can even put the video on pause, but I want you to reflect for a moment, how is our vision of effective equitable education different today than 15 years ago? 30 years ago? What about 50 years ago? So think about this for a moment. You might even want to ask a spouse or a colleague or somebody else and see what their answer is and see if it's the same as yours or if it's different. We're going to come back together and kind of review this when we meet next week and talk about this in a live setting, but I kind of want to get an idea of what it was like for you, and I will be sharing next week the answer, how I answered this question. Then what I want you to do is I want you to take what your answer is and align it to what you know about laws. And you might be thinking, well, I don't know about all of the laws, so that's why I provided you a handout for this week that states all of the laws from 1857, till current. I've highlighted very important laws that you need to pay close attention to, but just because they're highlighted, it doesn't mean that the rest of the laws are not important, because they absolutely are. As you know, everything is kind of built on a foundation, and so the laws before it kind of led up to that law, etc. So be very conscientious of all the laws that are written in this handout. Pay close attention to what happened before 1960. Pay very close attention to after the Park versus State of Pennsylvania in relation to parents' rights. Pay close attention to what happened after 1975 with the PL 94-142 IDEA, also known as the Individuals with Disability Education Act, which really states how we're allowed to service students between the ages of 3 to 21 in a free and appropriate education setting. And then pay close attention to around the 2002-2004 timeline when No Child Left Behind was written, and when we finally got that to be aligned with IDEA, and knowing from, I always think of it as a marriage of those two, because from that we got the birth of response to intervention, and knowing that response to intervention has really changed the way that we service students and identify them. And then of course kind of know where special education is going to be headed to in the future. Which brings me to your first activity. I would like you to go and learn more about the IEP and response to intervention by going to the Dos Rios Virtual School District. There's 3 ways that you can get to this. One is in your Blackboard course, going underneath course information and clicking on the link, or you can open up the PowerPoint presentation, view it in slideshow mode, and then click right on this picture, or you can go to the teacher education website. and scroll down to the Dos Rios School District link. From that, you will see the picture again. Click the picture, and it will open up a new window. From this window, anything that your mouse hovers over, you can click on. I'd like you to go to the Santa de Cristo Middle School, enter the school. You can play around and go wherever you want, but the first thing that I would like you to go to is Mrs. Romano's Resource Classroom. Go to her TV and click on training videos. There are 4 videos that pop up, 3 on the IEP, 1 on response to intervention. You just click directly on the video. It'll pop up and you can play it. Now remember, you don't want to do this until after you watch the video that you're currently watching, but all of the videos will help you get a better idea of this. One more thing that I would like to share is instead of calling them by tiers, I don't call them by tiers, I call them by what they actually are. So just to inform you, I call this whole group, small group, one-on-one or one-on-two setting. From that, we also need to talk about least restrictive environment, which is my favorite topic to talk about, as well as inclusion and integration, because there's a lot of debate and a lot of individuals have different feelings and thoughts about the way this is written. However, I want to share with you real quick what the law actually states. IDEA mandates that students with disabilities are educated with their peers without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate. Students in special education can only, and I repeat, only, be removed to separate classes or schools when the nature or severity of their disability is such that they cannot receive an appropriate education in a general education classroom with aids and services. When students are placed in segregated settings, schools must provide them with opportunities to interact with their peers without disabilities where appropriate. For example, art class, music, physical education, recess, assemblies, you name it. So how does this happen? Well, basically through inclusion. And inclusion allows students with disabilities to be in a kind of stay put basis in the general education classroom. And there's a lot of emphasis on inclusion, which I said has sparked debate about placement and instructional options for our students. But please know that this type of placement should be supported through some kind of teacher collaboration. And also to know that IDA does not imply it does imply that we need to do this, but it does not stipulate the way that this needs to happen for our students. So keep that in mind. In my own practice, I would say I use differentiated instruction and the co-teaching models, which are research-based, in order to integrate my students into the general education classroom and keep them included. Now, inclusion also means that the student isn't physically just there, but they're learning the same curriculum as everybody else. It just might look a lot different when it gets presented, or also the product that the student is supposed to come up with. Now, I've given you a handout in your folder that gives you more of a definition of the 5 different types of one teach, one support: station teaching, parallel teaching, alternative teaching, and team teaching. In my own practice, I use team teaching and alternative teaching all the time. That's the only way that I'm really able to include my students in the classroom, and I do it from severe needs all the way up to mild learning disabilities, just to let you know, and I make it work. So, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get together. So that brings us to the last part of this class. If you have any final thoughts or questions that you might have prior to us meeting next week, you can email me and I'd be happy to give you a response. As I mentioned, next week is going to be live, so please plan accordingly, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.